from the Daily Mail. This is crazy, my friends. State Accident Insurance Fund CEO targeted in terrifying attack by hooded gunman at his Oregon home. Now, we don't know exactly what this is, but this sounds very similar to what Luigi Mangione did. And considering how many leftists have been posting TikTok videos, wearing Luigi hats, demanding people engage in this kind of behavior, it was sooner or later we were going to story something like this. Take a look. An insurance CEO was targeted in a gun attack by a hooded gunman at his home in Oregon, with eerie similarities to Brian Thompson's murder in New York last year. The unidentified suspect took aim at State Accident Insurance Fund CEO Chip Terhune's $1.68 million home in Lake Oswego around 4 a.m. Friday. A grainy surveillance image released, Thursday, by Oswego police showed this, or was this last week? Gunman donning all dark clothes, the possible hoodie or ski mask. The perpetrator is believed to have fled the scene on foot, and as of Thursday, he remains on the run. 3 bullets shattered the glass of the CEO's front door and windows. The doors have since been boarded up with wood. The following day, Terhune informed staff at SAIF, a not-for-profit company that provides worker compensation in the state, that he initially thought rocks were being thrown at his home. Terhune, who is worth more than $764,000, honestly, it's a lot of money, but we're not talking about a guy worth $40 million like the CEO of that other insurance company. He sent an email to his more than 1,000 employees informing them the company received an email threat purporting to be from the person responsible. They got an image. This is crazy. Although it does not target any specific employee, the email references knowledge of employee and relatives' names and addresses. He further explained the sender attached a list containing some of the information sourced from internet searches, including many inaccuracies to the threatening message. He then attached that list to the employee email and said the company will reach out to them to share what information was dug up on them. So he clarified he isn't sure if he was targeted, but is now doing well and ready to work. We're looking at 2 big stories right now. This one, obviously, we saw this breaking last week, and now there's more information on it. Another CEO is attacked. We have seen the left, recently a story, this woman went on she went on TikTok and called for people to end the life of Elon Musk. I believe a U.S. attorney responded that he'd be in touch with her. We're hoping there's justice in that regard. But the threats of violence from the left have been escalating. And my friends, hear me go to any one of these liberal podcast subreddits and just search the term civil war and see what these people are posting about. Search the term Luigi on any one of these subreddits. And what will you find? They're going to be saying things like Luigi was always my favorite Mario brother. They're going to be saying things like we need more people playing Player 2. They're making all of these references to them wanting death, murder, and destruction. Now we have 2 big stories. Another attempt on the life of an insurance CEO, which may be unrelated, but who knows? Considering the far left sentiment bubbling up over the past several weeks, months, or year, I would not be surprised to find it was related. And then we have claims, whether true or not, that the New York attorneys and FBI offices are rogue and not operating under the purview of the federal government. What are we looking at right now?
It seems like things are escalating. Look, this attack by on this other CEO here. Look, this is not a surprise. There are going to be more like this. There was the person that was shooting up a Tesla dealership, even though Musk isn't there. That was only symbolic. This right here is in the exact same vein. What?
Did we ever figure out what the motivation was behind the Cybertruck explosion?
No. And I want to stress this too, as Phil put a pin in it real quick. I'm just going to say another one of these stories is they just arrested a transgender individual that Fox referred to as a woman with explosives at a Tesla dealership. Mm-hmm. They've been shooting up Tesla dealerships, smashing them, vandalizing them, and trying to blow them up. But Phil, you were saying?
Yeah, it's a situation where this stuff is I strongly feel like this is going to continue to escalate. There are people like Kyle Kalinske and Crystal Ball and Hassan Piker and et cetera. These people have been talking about the class war for ages. The whole of BreadTube has been talking about class war. And whether you're actually articulating, you should engage in violence or not, when you spew the rhetoric of a class war in the United States, that the reason that you're poor or the reason that you're dissatisfied, because it's really the situation, it's not about who has money and who doesn't. There are plenty of people out there that are poor, that even though they live paycheck to paycheck, they live fulfilled lives, that they love their families, they have other things in their lives that make them happy. But when you have an argument that is made constantly that the reason you are dissatisfied in your life is because of billionaires. That's the specific reason. And if we could just get rid of those billionaires, you would be happy in your life. You are going to get poorly adjusted people. You're going to get the mentally ill people that completely and totally dominate when it comes to the ground forces on the left. Those people will go out and act. And I'm not saying, oh, you shouldn't be able to say this or you shouldn't be able to say that, but there is now a climate in the United States that it is acceptable, and to some people it is obvious, not that I agree with this, but it is obvious that the problem is that there are a handful of billionaires in the world. And the thought is, if we could just solve the billionaire problem, then we would solve whatever ails me. I'm trans and I'm unhappy. I'm whatever your disorder is will be fixed just by solving the billionaire problem. But one more additional problem to that is the people that are dissatisfied, the people that are unhappy, they're not actually going to be able to find the billionaires. They're going to find people that are worth a couple $1,000,000 or people that just have more than they do.
So Ray Dalio had a conversation with Tucker Carlson, and he said, we're in a civil war. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being, we're not in a civil war, and 10 being, I can see them coming around the corner, where would you guys think we are on that scale?
I'd say we're at a 5 or 6.
5 or 6. Oof. That's over the middle. What do you think? Mary's going to say 1.
Nothing ever happens.
Nothing ever happens.
Yeah, I'm going to go with 1. That's a safe answer. What would be the sides then?
What do you mean? The Civil War?
Civil War between territorial.
No,
they're usually never territorial. It's ideological
divisions. Yeah, no.
Yeah. So you've got like the populist, and then you've got the establishment forces. So if you look at how like the corporate press and the Democrats, the worldview they have, I mean, who's ever on the side of the FBI field office in New York versus the federal government? And they exist. Whoever these people are who are trying to bomb Tesla dealerships, they're organized. Antifa has cells all over the country. They pretend like they don't so that stupid people think they don't exist, but they do. They organize online. That's how there's a group we call the Tourists. Go to any one of these protests in, I shouldn't say any names for legal reasons, but we know their names. We know who they are. They are at every single protest across the country. And you're like, how did that person know to show up in Long Beach?
I've heard this exact same thing from other people who covered the riots in 2020.
Ask Richie McGinnis.
Exactly. He will tell you. He wrote about it in his book. And then the Daily Caller also reported on this other story. On Monday, the FBI's Houston office announced that they arrested someone by the name of Seth or Andrea Gregori after he allegedly plotted an attack against police similar to the 2016 Dallas ambush. He was making terroristic threats to the Houston Police Department, Corpus Christi Police Department. And what was really interesting about this story is that nobody seemed to blink an eye at the fact that this guy was known by both Seth and Andrea. So I was like, we should reach out to the police and ask if this was a transgender person. That seems pretty weird. And apparently it is. A CCPD officer said that based on information they received from the FBI, quote, it's our understanding that Grigori is transitioning. His driver's license indicates that he is male, but booking information from the Nueces County Jail, apologies if I mispronounced that, reportedly marks him as female. So he was trying to engage in a mass killing similar to what happened after the Michael Brown incident in 2016 in Dallas.
And then, of course, we had there was some breaking news on the Ziz cult today. I don't know if you guys saw that.
I'm not familiar with that.
You're not familiar with the Ziz?
No, tell me about it.
This is the transgender leftist cult that
great.
They killed the border guard in Vermont.
Okay.
A couple weeks ago, they shot.
I did hear about that.
Shot and killed them. That's happening, Mary. far left transgender
like
cultists shot and killed a border guard trying to flee.
Splinter group that came off of Antifa.
No, well, I believe
How did they originate?
They refer to themselves as Trantifa. Like that is the actual word they use for their group, transgender Antifa. It's not necessarily a splinter group. The left is all splinter groups that have what they call the diversity of tactics, and they coordinate. So how it works is there will be 10 people that live in Seattle, and they'll have some like gutter space they rent for dirt where they organize. When they want to set up a protest, they will put out messages to various forums and individuals. It's a splinter network. And then the tourists, we call them, these are people who travel around the world, not just the country, to foment and organize and provide expertise for protests. They provide legal strategies and obstruction strategies. So these tourists will go to these little hovels and provide materials, signs, rope, whatever they might need, and then through their network, put out a call to action to make their protests larger. That's why you end up seeing the exact same people in the front of every march in every different city in the country. Some people think they're feds, that they're working for the government to sow discontent for whatever reason. I don't know that that's true.
Who's funding it?
The government. Like, that's the conspiracy.
Well, aside from the conspiracy, like, is this some kind of NGO funded operation?
Well, so it's not an operation. There are operations.
Yes.
So one mistake a lot of conservatives often make is they'll say, George Soros is paying protesters to be here. Yeah. Wrong. No, they're not. The Open Society Foundation provides grants to various nonprofits. During Occupy Wall Street, there were a handful of nonprofits that sent their employees down to help them organize. So how does Occupy get as big as it did? 3 or 4 people from various NGOs that were paid to be there put out flyers at universities, tricked them into showing up, and then took control of the organization to make big protests happen. So when the conservatives hear that NGOs are funding this, they say the protesters are paid to be there. Then the 22-year-old college kid who showed up bored for no reason says, I didn't get paid to be here. I don't know anybody who did. They're lying. And they use that to recruit more. They say, see, Fox News lied about you.
And they do the same thing with less violent methods too. So for example, like the Satanic Temple, they had a protest at a Virginia school board meeting in Norfolk. I went down and covered it, and I saw a few of the people. You know, you can't miss them. They've got shaped heads, weird tattoos, pentagrams, all this crazy nonsense. And then I was looking at a story from a different Satanic Temple protest at a different school, literally halfway across the country. I can't remember what state it was in. And looking at the pictures, I went, I know her. She was at the Virginia protest. Why is she in Oregon or wherever she was at that time? And then the Free Beacon reported that all of these town halls that are popping off about Doge and Elon Musk in red districts are organized by George Soros, where they have multiple of his NGOs and nonprofits paying people and putting out targeted messaging on social media to encourage people to go to these town halls, telling them the details, the dates, the location, the phone numbers for the representatives, and they're showing up and basically trying to give the impression that there is this fomented opposition from within the Republican Party against Doge.
Right. And let's just clarify, George Soros is not personally doing any of this stuff.
Right. It's his...
He's got philanthropy wings. I believe his son is running them. They provide grants to various NGOs and nonprofits.
Right. Indivisible, Move On are a couple of them.
And then these nonprofits decide what to do. And so what I've personally witnessed, having covered this stuff for about a decade, is that you'll go to a protest and it's a bunch of random people milling about, no idea what's going on. And then there will be like 2 or 3 people and you're like, I've seen you in every major city I've ever been to. And they're like, right, I work for insert NGO. And you're like, and you're paid to be here. And they're like, well, this is part of our organizing. So yeah, this is my job. And then you're like, and then you went to all the universities, you put up flyers, you went on social media, you put out calls to action. Yep. And so all these people are here because of you. Yes. Okay. So you were paid to be here by an NGO to create this protest. And they go, right. Then what happens is the 300 other people, you go up to them and say the same thing, were you paid to be here? And they go, no. Why are you here? I heard about it on the internet.
Yeah. Phil, I wanted to say I'm glad that you brought up the bread tubers and these far left streamers and influencers, because they just think that this is all fun and games, and it's because they've been on a playground of no consequences this entire time. And the past decade, basically, the FBI has been paying special attention to right-wing extremists. Meanwhile,
and by right-wing extremists, they mean like parents that have the audacity to go to the PTA meetings and look at what their kids are learning.
They also mean right-wing groups that they infiltrate in order to get people to say or do incriminating things so they can get more convictions. But the left-wing streamers are the ones fueling this fire and making it a laughing matter. And I think that maybe something that the FBI needs to focus on as they're entering a new era is far left extremism, because there is an increasing, it's like some mixture of boredom and rage that is stirring up in a lot of people. And it's not going to be pretty.
So the things that you hear that actually bother people when it comes to, there's a lot of people that would say, oh, poor people are really are upset, and it's not that poor people are upset because or being poor makes people unhappy. That's not the case, because there are people that are in significantly poorer countries than the United States, and they live happy, fulfilled lives because things like family make you happy, right? Things like you having a fulfilled life, God, religion, your community, those kind of things are what actually makes people happy. Material things to a certain degree, like having the ability to pay your bills, can add to stress and can make you unhappy. But once you get to a certain amount of money, more money doesn't actually make you happy. It's the reason that billionaires become billionaires is not because they want money. It's the drive to do the thing that they're doing, right? Mm-hmm. So it's the what's the phrase that I'm looking for? Income inequality that upsets people. When people can't pay their bills, right? But they have the internet on their phone, but they're poor in America. They can't pay their bills, but they see people on Instagram or on the internet that live lavish lifestyles, or they hear, billionaires have all this stuff. They get upset that there is such an income inequality. That's something that will spur people to action.
Comparison is the thief of joy.
Yes.
I don't even know if it's as cut and dry as that, because when we're seeing like a lot of these school shooters or mass shooters who've had their plans foiled, seeing like these half-baked manifestos that they write, I know that when I read them, it sounds like extremist political philosophy, but they don't even pick a side of the extreme to pledge allegiance to. It's like they're just a lot of the statements they're making in these manifestos don't actually make coherent sense with each other. It just sounds extreme in every last direction.
Right. That's why I say wokeness is just cult-like adherence to liberal orthodoxy. They don't actually have any logic behind their ideas, but for some reason they march in lockstep with each other.
So I'm not familiar with what you're talking about.
Like that female school shooter who she was in
Tennessee?
Wisconsin, I believe.
Okay, I don't know this one.
Right? Her name was Samantha something.
Oh, right. Yeah,
she wrote this manifesto that seemed like it was this radical feminist manifesto, but then she was also making statements that were like extremely racist at the same time. And it was this completely incoherent scattershot philosophy.
But of course,
she seemed to have. But also, she was practically, if this was written by her, practically illiterate.
Right. But this is not surprising at all that someone who would do something so psychotic did not have a functioning brain. Yeah. There's no logic behind the actions taken by these extremists because it doesn't result in anything that lends itself towards an ideology or any kind of goal. So it's not surprising that all of the manifestos tend to be garbled mishmash nonsense.
It's not even that I'm expecting it to be logical, but internally logical.
No.
And that's the thing I've noticed, like, just if you track what manifestos sound like and what they're trying to communicate over time, they're just getting more and more nonsensical as time goes on.
So the concern is when you look at liberal YouTubers, there's no logic in what they're saying. When you look at the corporate press, it's just lies and manipulation. I mean, let's talk about the price of eggs. They didn't care at all. Everyone was screaming about it. The moment Trump walks in, they scream the price of eggs. There's no logical pathway for what they're offering. Take a look at, you mentioned BreadTube, these communists and these Marxists on YouTube. They don't have a basic understanding of economics. AOC actually stated that a tax subsidy was a cash gift, which is an inversion of what it actually is. A tax subsidy is a discount. AOC doesn't know at all what she's talking about. So they rally people based on an incoherent, illogical state of being where they're angry at somebody, and they accuse Trump of doing that which they do. They are demagogues. AOC says, I have no idea what's going on or how the world works, but I'm angry, and if you're angry, be angry at him. They rally people in this direction, and it leads to violence against a Tesla dealership. Elon doesn't work at Tesla dealerships. Who are you mad at?
What's symbolic?
Joe Smith, who makes $40,000 a year cleaning the toilets of a car dealership? Why are you attacking these people?
It's the attack on the car dealership was symbolic, and it's probably more akin to, I'm not sure if this is actually true, but it reminds me more of the graffiti that you see than an actual attack on a person. You know what I mean? They want to destroy something, vandalize. It's more like vandalism. Sure, it's scary if they use firearms. That does make it more frightening. But that's the intent: frightening and vandalism, not actually hurting someone. But even still, like you were talking about, like the bread tubers and stuff. They want to go, they intentionally aim at people that are dissatisfied. And I've said this a million times. Happy people don't engage in revolutionary activities. It takes people that are upset.
They're idle and nihilistic.
Yeah, they're nihilistic, absolutely. And it was the same thing in previous eras when there were communist revolutions. They told the average person in Ukraine that it was the kulaks' fault that there was no food, right? The kulak, that you're broke and poor because of the kulaks. The kulaks were the farmers that knew how to act. Like, they got the house and the cow that they had because they knew how to farm. They had some land they could farm. They were actually providing food, so they had a little bit of money. And then the communists told them, look, the kulaks, they have stuff. That's your enemy. They're the reason. And this clearly, they weren't getting the average peasant angry with the kulaks because the kulaks were living in palatial luxury. They had a house and they had a farm and they had some cows. They were still farmers, but because they had something and the people that had nothing had nothing, and it seemed like so much more, and they were starving and the kulaks weren't, it was easy to turn the peasantry against the kulaks. And what happened? Millions of Ukrainians died because of it. Same thing in China.
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.